episode 3 of the roll cage install. If you like what you're watching, please consider liking and subscribing to this video series. The chosen cage for our Cavalier build is a mini stock cage. It just barely fits in a Cavalier. It also needs some modification. So in this video, we'll talk about the modifications we had to do to the mini stock cage to get it to fit into the Cavalier. It was a pretty close fit. I would recommend using one if you are considering building your own cage. If you're not confident in welding, then I suggest that you have somebody professionally build you a cage, because cage is probably the #1 safety device that you can install in a race car. Right here we're kind of dividing our labor. I was going to paint the car red, which I did for the season. That was kind of a mistake. So we're just dividing labor. I'm just roughing up what's left of the factory paint, get the clear coat off. My brother's currently cutting out the bolts for the seat, the factory seat, and they're just little threaded studs. He also cut out the gussets in the rocker panel area, was what I call it. It's a unibody car, so they have like these triangular gussets that run along the parallel along the side of the car, and he's just cutting those out. So we're doing that right now. He's working on his side. I think he hands the grinder over to me eventually, and I cut out my side. As we're working through this build, the one thing that you'll be aware of at all times is there's a lot of glue. So, Cavaliers are built with crimp welds, and lots of this glue. That's the only thing I can describe it as. And what we're doing is we're cutting away these gussets, smashing it down so it's flat, and essentially we're going to install some rectangular tubing. That'll be in another clip. We're just getting through the grinding off and prepping the interior of the car for the welding section. Currently my brother's doing some repair work here inside the car. I'm trying to run the welder. It's kind of a one-man job, unfortunately. So a little bit of standing around for me at this point. But he's repairing some things, put some plating in. We had a little weight reduction due to natural aging, i.e. rusted out. So he's doing some repairs here, trying to weld things back together, just a little bit safer. Cutting down this rectangular tube steel to fit in the place where the rocker gussets were. You can see that they're cut out in the background. This is the basis or the platform for our mini stock cage, and it's a great way to stiffen the car up in a section that could be subject to damage due to side impact. So I highly recommend that you do this. We've found that on the 93 car this helped quite a bit. Alright, so the rocker has been reinforced with a piece of rectangular tubing, and that'll be our basis for our roll cage. And then the next step is to cut out the inside of this door panel so that we can run our door bars along the door skin.
Alright, we've got the hoop in the back just kind of tacked in so we can measure these distances, because we're using a mini stock roll cage, one of the smallest roll cages we could find, but we're custom fitting it. Unfortunately, we made sure that we had the carpenter square a 90 when it is welded to the rocker bar that we put in. The problem that we ran into is that the Cavalier top is curved. It's not exactly a 90 degree. We did chop down this hoop to fit it underneath the top, into the car. But the problem that we're running into is trying to get things to be square. We know that the hoop is, or the halo, we know the halo's pretty close to a 90 degree, so we're not too far off. The question that we really are running into is the angle of this front bar, and we know that it needs to be cut from the bottom so that we can match up to the halo. So we're gonna just chop off just little by little, keep test fitting it. Once we know that that distance is correct, we also have the bottom bar that is part of the roll cage down there to kind of guide us a little bit as well. But yeah, this is a custom fit. We're kind of concerned about the angles here. It really looks like when we start cutting from the bottom that it's going to be bent in somehow. Yeah, you just got a little bit of distance there. I don't know, but it is going to bow out. I don't know.
Well, they've got the bottom squared off, so
that tells you that should be a 90 there.
Yeah. And the other car it's at a 90. It doesn't like angle in or anything to make it fit. So every little bit we take off, it gets closer to meeting up here.
I would say that we're going to lose at least 3 inches.
So when you think about the cage, a mini stock cage, and you look at the geometry of it, it really is just a box. And the problem was that our box was too tall for the space that was being put into. And it ended up that, through the process of just cutting off a little bit at a time, that the angles for that fish mouth and the halo matched up pretty much, way it needed to in the end. So, if you're assembling one of these, just take your time, cut a little bit at a time, and it will work out.
What we're going to do now is we're going to cut 2 inches off the bottom of this front pipe, and we're going to just kind of test fit based on that. I'm pretty sure we're going to need more, but 2 inches seemed right there. Need power. 2 inches seemed appropriate as a starting point. Alright, so we've got the corner bar in on the driver's side, and the only way that we got to fit was to slowly chop 1/2 inch at a time. We knew we took about 6 inches off the passenger side, but we didn't know how many we're going to have to take off the driver's side, because it didn't seem to ever match up the door bar length, and this corner, the fish mouth, was an issue. So we squared this up with a carpenter square on the door sill frame as we were trying to pull it in. So basically, every time you took height off this bar, it started pulling it in towards the driver. And that allowed us to get these door bars within welding distance. So the problem that we face currently is once we get the door bars in, we still didn't get the front bar in on the cage, and we might end up having to modify that bar because I don't believe that this splay, this roll cage requires a splay, obviously, and I don't think we got the splay quite right on this because we're a couple inches off. So we'll have some fun customizing that one into place. But I think the door bars are going to go in just fine. We're going to stack them and weld them into place. We're just simply spot tacking everything. We'll go back in and do final welds and weld everything nicely as another step. Because we couldn't figure out the exact fitment. We just chose to put spot welds in so that if we had to, we could just nick them out and you know, recut. So that's what we're doing now. We're doing a door bar stack, and we'll come back in a moment and show you the results of that. And then we're gonna have to deal with this front bar. I don't know if we'll get to it tonight. It's getting kind of late, but it's one of those projects where you just kind of have to slowly cut things. Don't go. You know, the first thing we realized was we just lop off big parts of the bar. You don't put bar back, you can only take bar off. So it's just like in carpentry. So we're gonna get the door safe, get it all stacked up, and then we'll worry about this front. We can always get more. I mean, it's just a straight bar, so we can always get more stock of that. Whereas these bent pieces were super custom. I don't know what we would do to get more pieces. I'm sure somebody would make it, but at a cost. So that's where we're at. We're gonna do some more tack welding, and then we'll see how things measure up at the end. So what we did here is we actually pulled apart the passenger corner again. And it's a good thing we did. Things fit a lot better now that we've kind of re-engineered where we were putting things. Alright, well there we have it. Wasn't sure if the camera could take welding arc flashes, so I didn't really film it too much like that, but anyways, we do have the roll cage initially tack welded in. We're going to go back through and weld it properly, but you can see we got the Z-bar in, and it looks really nice. I like where it's positioned, but we really had to loosely assemble this to get it in right. And that would be the biggest tip that I could give you when fitting one of these roll cages. We used the carpenter square a lot just to make sure that things were 90 degrees, because it really is a box essentially that you're putting together. And the other thing that we discovered while we were doing this was just taking little bits off at a time to modify this mini stock frame to fit in this Cavalier was the key to getting this to fit. Especially this corner, or even that corner, but especially this corner, the driver's side, we really struggled to get this in correctly. But just taking, after we hit the 8-inch mark, just taking little half-inch chunks off the bottom, lowered the bottom of this bar and got it into position. So when you're doing something like this and you're modifying something from another essentially setup, going slow, checking all the measurements over and over again. We didn't just cut it. We measured over and over again to make sure that we were getting these angles right, that this actually is splayed. Like you would not think that this halo and these front bars would be splayed. And just doing these little tack welds just to kind of hold it in place until we can go in and really weld it properly, I think really helps. So I don't know if you had anything, Brad, to contribute to that, but that's really what we did.
Yeah, we just took a time with it. And we didn't get frustrated. I mean, it's easy to get frustrated when you don't get things to match up right. But if you sit and you think about it and you try and work it out in your mind, you know, and test fit things over and over, it doesn't hurt to keep trying to fit it together without cutting anything, so you can kind of get a visual. Because some people are visual, some people like measuring. And I'm pretty visual, and that's what helped me out a lot, is having Sean hook up parts and pieces, and then we say, well, maybe just a 1/2 inch at a time, it'll start drawing it in, which it did. And the door bars started fitting right away as soon as we got down to about a 1/2 inch being away. And we really didn't have to fight it. And if you've got to fight it, then something's wrong. This kit has been made so many times on a jig, it's precision cut. And if you're off, it's because of something you did. And like Sean said, using a carpenter square helped out a lot, and tack welding it. Because what if you find out that something's just not right, and you've went ahead and welded something together? This does not come apart if you got to cut it up. It's not going to be the same. You've compromised it.
We didn't adjust any of the fish mouths.
No.
They are all in their place. And the reason why they're in their place is because we took the time to just kind of ease things in and make sure that it, you know, is proper. And just doing these little tack welds is really the key to that.
We thought we were going to have to modify the front bar, but after working with it and making adjustments, then we found out, yeah, it's correct. Don't mess with this stuff.
Yeah.
You cannot cut the halo. You cannot cut this halo. It is designed as a part of the safety system. You don't want to, like, if it's too wide and it don't fit, well, you're going to have to make adjustments elsewhere. But you never cut the halo. You never cut your door bars. You don't cut the main hoop. You can take height off of it.
That's all we did. All we did to this kit was take height off.
So
that's absolutely it.
Yeah, we didn't do any other adjustments to it other than just height.
So we cut the bottom of these bars off down here in the corners.
Yeah.
And that's all we did.
I think if I measured out right with this plate down, or this rectangular tubing here rather, I think we had like 41 inches roughly, and this kit is 47 inches tall. So
it's a very tall kit.
Yeah. So it was designed for a Mustang, like a 70s to 80s Mustang, like a Fox body. And it'll fit in here. You just gotta chop it down to size.
Well, again, it's a box, right? And you just slice the bottom of the box off.
You can't slice the top. You can only
slice the bottom. Yeah. And I mean, if you had even a narrow car, which I doubt you would ever run into, I mean, you could drop a bottom bar out of the door bar, right? If you really had to.
But we don't want to, because we want to protect the driver. Because what if somebody comes up into you low and some part of their bumper comes off? Well, you don't want to be impaled. There's still another piece that we'll highlight probably tomorrow after we get this welded together, and it's a plate. It's 1/4 inch thick steel plate that goes on the outboard side of this cage over there on those door bars. And that absolutely keeps anything from coming through.